Buyer's remorse is real. So getting through buyer's remorse, being able to walk your client through the process is one of the most important steps right now to keep your deals together. One major way to avoid buyer's remorse is a good, complete buyer consultation. Make sure you're sitting down with your buyer and discussing all their wants and their needs in the home and get to the root of it. Like, why do they need this big backyard? Why do they want to have so many bedrooms and bathrooms? Like, what's that going to do for their family? Tie it into an emotion with the buyer so you can come back to that later and remind them of it. So if they start to get cold feet at some point, you can say, hey, remember what you told me in our buyer consultation, that what this was going to do for your family, why you needed this big backyard? If you get in deep with the client, finding out the real reason that they want these things, you can always go back to them. Another reason that buyer consultations are so important is it's going to save you time. You're not going to have to show every house on the market if you know exactly what they're looking for. If there's 25 houses in your market that match what they're looking for, but they have to have a pool or they have to have a fireplace, well, now that 25 houses now went down to 5. But if you don't ask those questions on the front end, you don't know. And the next thing you know, look, my alarm's going off. Let me turn this off real quick. Stop. Next thing you know, you showed them 25 houses when you really only had to show them 5. So save yourself the time and energy, save their time and energy, right? Because we can get buyer burnout fatigue from looking at too many houses. They may say they want to see every house on the market. No, most of the time they only want to see houses that actually will fit what they're looking for. They're not really out looky-looing if you've conducted a proper buyer consultation. During your buyer's consultation, one of the things that I recommend our agents do is go through the contract. Go through and let the buyer kind of walk through the process of what it's going to feel like to make an offer. So that way, after you start showing them properties and you're ready to write your first offer, which is, I guarantee, going to happen at 8:30 at night on a Friday night, after you got done showing, you're going to be writing your first offer with your buyer, and you're going to get it all written up and then send them over a 13-page document at 8:30 at night and say, here, hurry up and sign this as fast as you can so I can hurry up and get it over to the agent. Or would it be easier to sit down, go through it all, and explain to them about repairs, explain to them about contingencies, explain to them about the timeline of when they have to get their earnest money deposit in. So that way, when it comes time to make that offer, this is not the first time they're looking at this. This is not learning a new language at 8:30 on a Friday night. It's something they're revisiting because they've already been through the process with you, and it should not be completely new to them. And it will make that process faster on the back end if you spend time and energy on the front end. One of the biggest things biggest, Josh! Another factor, another key ingredient of buyer's remorse, you see what I'm trying to say? Furthermore, in addition to, there are multiple types of buyer's remorse today. I've seen it time and time again. Buyer's remorse starts to set in whenever it's time for the buyer to look at what they're going to actually have to bring to closing, their closing costs. So typically in our market, closing costs are going to run somewhere between 2 to 3% of the purchase price. So on a $400,000 house, you're talking about $8,000 to $12,000. Now, do you think it's a good idea to be talking about that the day you're putting the offer in? Or do you think you should be talking about that up front with your client, that they can discuss with their lender to make sure that they have the money set aside, right? I've had times where a step was skipped in the sales process and we go to make the offer and I go, hey, by the way, you got your 3% set aside for closing costs, and they look at me like, closing costs? What are you talking about? And that's when you go, oh, I forgot to have the closing cost conversation. And next thing you know, we're discussing it, and they go, I don't have 3% of the sale price. I thought I got pre-qualified for my loan, but I don't have any money over here to pay this stuff. Next thing you know, we had to restructure the entire offer, take the price above list price, pray that the seller was willing to pay for the closing costs for the buyer. It all worked out in this scenario, but in the current market, I can't guarantee you're gonna be able to get the seller to pay for all your closing costs. So making sure that you're having a conversation with your buyer on the front end about the costs they are going to incur once they go under contract. For example, about 3% towards closing costs. You're also going to have the appraisal that they're going to have to pay for up front, ranging somewhere between $500 and $700 for the appraisal. They're also going to have their home inspections, their WDO, which, you know, a couple $100 there. You're also going to have your regular home inspection, your WinMit, your 4-point. Those things are going to run, you know, $600. So I always tell the clients, look, you're going to have, you know, let's be safe here and put about $1,500 aside for upfront costs above and beyond your closing costs, because these fees have to be paid prior to closing, because you're paying someone for their service. They need to be paid when they go do the work, not later on down the road so you can like decide to walk away from the deal, but you need to make sure that your client knows that these are upfront costs that they were going to have to pay. So like, you may want to think about making sure they've got $1,500 in their bank. I've had instances where, can we schedule the home inspection for next Thursday? Well, ironically, next Thursday's payday, because the buyer didn't have any money and he wasn't going to have money to pay for the inspection until payday. We've also had, hey, can you schedule the closing on the 2nd? I get paid on the 1st. Like, these are all things you have to think about when you're talking with your client to make sure that they are prepared for the costs that are incurred when purchasing a home. If not, you're setting them up for failure. You must walk your client through every step of the process, right? If you show them what it looks like, then when they're doing it, it doesn't feel like new, right? Because they're being reminded at that point. So when you sit down with a buyer consultation, you walk them through, not just like, let's go look for houses, like talk to the lender, let's go. No, walk them through the entire process. What it's gonna look like once you get under contract. What it's gonna look like when they have to get their earnest money deposit turned in. What it's gonna look like when they need to go in and have inspections done. Walk them through that entire process, because once you get under contract, that's when the real work begins. That's when deadlines have to be met. That's when paperwork has to be turned into the lender, into the insurance company, the title company, right? That's when the agent becomes scatterbrained typically. You have to control the narrative to be able to walk that client through what this is gonna look like, so they understand that you're gonna be a busy little bee behind the scenes. They may not necessarily be seeing you on a daily basis like they were when they were looking for homes, but you're gonna be working diligently behind the scenes to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted to get them to the finish line. Now, the way our team's set up, we have a transaction coordinator who handles all that paperwork. So if you don't like the paperwork, call me.